One of the big problems that faces science today in the matter of conviction is also its long, dramatic struggle against the delusion of immortality. Scientists have become actually enraged at the stupidity of people who insist that they want to live after they're dead. What could be more utterly ridiculous and what could be more utterly unscientific? What does it all mean if no one is going anywhere, no one is ever going to know it or not, and no one is ever ultimately going to care what we had or how we got it or whether we kept it or lost it? The whole thing is rounded by such a futility that it's getting more and more difficult to live with ourselves. Now the prospect or possibility of being blown up in our scientific prime also makes a certain cause of apprehension. The scientist himself, where is he going? If he is the victim of a direct hit, where is he? What difference does it make whether he graduated Phi Beta Kappa or flunked the course? He can say, well, if I graduated cum laude, at least my friends were all glad about it. And as a result of that, I was able to attain a higher social dignity. Everyone called me Herr Professor or Doctor. But realize that after he's blown up, he's not even going to remember what they called him. Now the communist peoples are building a new world order. They are going to make the world safe for the proletariat. They're going to have 5-year plans and 10-year plans and nobody knows how many year plans, in order that a great idea, the idea of Marx and Engels, shall ultimately wave its banner triumphantly over the earth. Do these people realize that if this happens, they're not even going to know about it? We're going to have this great socialized country, which is the fulfillment of our desires. It may not be anything our descendants want, but we think they do. But we're not going to know it. So we pass it on to them. We're not building for our own frail mortality. We are building for the future. Now we suddenly wonder about the frail mortality of the future. All our children, their children, and their children to eternity are also all going to stop remembering that they ever existed. So that actually our memory is just a little span of years. Then there isn't anything. And no one will know, no one will care, and we will not know nor care. There will be no evidence in space whether we came before or after the dinosaur. But we will be as dead as the dinosaur. So with this general thinking, we have a tremendous futility. I know one scientist got rather excited about it when he suddenly realized that according to the best calculations, the planet is not going to last more than another 10 or 20 billion years. At the end of that time, all progress will go up in smoke, steam, or whatever is used to terminate planets. There isn't any more. And in face of this famous line, there isn't any more, what are we all getting excited about? What is the end of this thing? And science can no longer tell us that the great victory is a full stomach. Men can die on a full stomach also. And when they're dead, they will not know whether their stomach was full or not. When we rest, as Omar said, with the world's last 7,000 years, who cares? What are we doing? materialism, as it affects the problem of immortality, leaves us with absolutely nothing worth doing. There is no more reason why we should be great than that we should become a wino and wander around spending our weekends in the county jail. It all means nothing. Because in oblivion there is neither a preferred group nor an unpreferred group. What is it all going? Where is it all going? Everybody thought in Russia that they were doing a very unkind trick to Stalin when they took his remains away from his partner in the Kremlin. But if they're correct, he doesn't even know it. He never will know it. And in a few years, they will not know they did it. Most discouraging. So science has to do something about this. Because science can never maintain an ethical universe with nothing going anywhere or coming from anywhere. We cannot face any human hope. We cannot give the human being anything to build on if we make him a little spot of biological life in a universe of eternal terminations. So as soon as he gets through trying to figure out whether the universe has an intelligent principle in it or not, he's got to begin thinking about what this intelligent principle might have planned for its creatures rather than what he thinks it planned. And if science comes to the conclusion, which it is coming to so rapidly that it'll probably be here within 4 or 5 years, that this universe is ruled over by an eternal conscious principle, it's going to have to revive and revise its thinking about the termination of anything. We are going to come face to face with the problem of an eternal existence in an eternal creation, ever changing but never ceasing.
Throughout the history of the world, folks, if you really study the history, and you don't get caught up in all of these idealistic, philosophical questions, but look at the reality of the time, you'll see that no people on the face of this earth ever were free until this country was founded. And what was the premise that made people free in this country that had never existed before in the history of the world? What is it? Just something has to go before that.
God.
There is a God. Without God, there are no unalienable creator-endowed rights. So if you reject God, already you've rejected freedom. Because God says you have unalienable rights. If God is the ultimate authority in the universe, who can take those rights away from you? No one. Period. No one. That's the premise upon which this nation was founded. One, there's a God. Whether you believe in God or not doesn't make any difference. Our founding fathers said for this to work, there must be a higher law that man must answer to. Otherwise, liberty and freedom is at the capricious will of whoever rules, whoever's in office. Therefore, there is a God. Without that, there is nothing else. I said it on my radio show a million times. How many of you heard me say this before? Whether you believe in God or not, you better start if you want to be free. How many of you heard me say that? How many times? About 500,000? It's the truth, isn't it? You see, man, if he doesn't have to answer to a higher authority, is subjective in everything that he does, isn't it? Where does moral law come from? It comes from God. Without God, there can be no moral law.
Thus, the better type of person begins to emerge as an archetype in this confusion. And even science now, particularly psychology, is beginning to talk about complete people. No longer people walking around on one leg or with one arm or with one eye. In other words, people who have been rescued from intellectual and scientific surrealism. We are not very fond of some of the kinds of paintings that we see where we can't tell whether it's a human being or an omelet.